The movie begins with a large library. There's a book in the middle, gleaming brightly due to the sunlight coming from the window. A small gnome stands in front of the book and introduces the story of Sherlock Holmes. Two other gnomes join him just then and bicker about which story they should recite today. In the end, they all agree upon Sherlock Holmes, who happens to be the greatest detective of all time. However, in this world, Sherlock is a garden gnome. His real name is Sherlock Gnomes. The scene then shifts to a huge museum. In front of it stands the famous Sherlock Gnomes and his best friend, Watson. They're solving a mystery about missing gnomes and are almost about to become successful. They run into the museum and see a bunch of gnomes asking for help. Just then, the villain behind this, Moriarty, pops up from a box of bones. He talks about crushing every last gnome in London. Sherlock hears this and says that he won't let Moriarty destroy the gnomes. Just then, Moriarty runs towards Sherlock to attack him with a rolling pin, but Sherlock somehow manages to defend himself with a bone. The two then fight on top of the skeleton of a dinosaur. While fighting, Sherlock loses balance and slips. He hangs onto the dinosaur's bones. Moriarty is about to hit his hand with the rolling pin, but Sherlock dodges it and Moriarty falls instead. While falling, Moriarty turns a lever that causes the whole skeleton to collapse. Luckily, Sherlock saves himself just in time and all the gnomes thank him. The scene then shifts to a couple moving into their new house. They unpack their stuff and head to the garden. They place all the gnomes in their garden and leave to visit a cafe. Right after they leave, all the gnomes come to life and start talking and jumping around. That's when the leaders of the gnomes say that it is time to select new gnomes for the garden. Those gnomes will lead the others in preparing their garden for the winter. The old leaders finally select the new leaders, who are none other than Romeo and Juliet. Meanwhile, with Sherlock and Watson, Sherlock uses Watson as a punching bag. The two are arguing when another gnome comes running in to report something. The little gnome claims that all his friends along with the whole garden are gone. Sherlock and Watson go to the garden, which has already lost 10 gnomes. Because of this, Sherlock suspects that someone has kidnapped all the gnomes without leaving a single footprint. The scene shifts to the garden with Romeo and Julie. As the new leaders, they are planning on a centerpiece for the garden. Romeo is disappointed because Juliet isn't listening to him. Then, Romeo plans to get a Cupid's arrow orchid. Romeo sneaks into the shop that sells it and tries to take the flower out of its vase but struggles to do so. He finally manages to get it, but ends up knocking down a table. Because of this, the buzzer starts to ring and he tries to leave, but fails. Suddenly, he sees Juliet holding out a hand to help him. The two finally go back to the garden. That's when they start arguing. Just then, Romeo hears his gnome friend shouting for help from the phone. He and Juliet rush into the garden, but are shocked to see that it is empty. Just then, Sherlock and Watson enter the garden to look for clues. Juliet finds a calling card with a 9 written at the front and an M written at the back. Sherlock says that Moriarty is alive. The villain is giving them clues to find him and the kidnapped gnomes. Seeing all this, Romeo asks what is going on but doesn't get an answer. Sherlock and Watson finally head toward Chinatown with Juliet and Romeo following them. They all enter a sewer. There, Sherlock and Watson take a boat and start moving quickly so the two gnomes can't follow them. But this doesn't stop Romeo and Juliet as they continue following the detectives. That's when they hear a bunch of mice and look at the direction of the sound. They notice all the mice running away from a giant wave of water. The wave of water reaches them, and they are about to fall off the boat when Juliet makes a sharp turn. They end up surviving. Then finally Sherlock explains to them that Moriarty was an evil ornament, and he liked to terrorize the ornamental world when he found his match in Sherlock. From then on, Moriarty has started kidnapping the gnomes, leaving clues for Sherlock to find them. And if Sherlock cannot find them within 24 hours, Moriarty will smash the gnomes. Romeo and Juliet are shocked to hear this, but they continue on their way. They reach Chinatown and enter a restaurant which the clue has led to. They all enter a room filled with Chinese dolls disguised as them. They walk through the room. Just then, someone spots them, and a bunch of cat dolls surround them. In front of them stands the Chinese Empress cat doll. She tells them to leave right then, but they don't. Suddenly, a bunch of cat dolls start attacking them and Sherlock and Juliet run to find the clue, leaving Watson and Romeo to fight the cat dolls. After some time, the team finds a clock that has another card with an airplane. Just then, more cat dolls come out of nowhere to attack them. They all run for their lives. Sherlock passes Watson a bunch of paper lanterns and suction cups. They finally run out the window disguising themselves as a lantern and hop onto a bus using the suction cup. They hang onto a tree, and that's when Sherlock tells them that they should go to the art gallery. But Romeo insists that they go to the museum where Sherlock last fought Moriarty. Juliet tells him that they should just go to the art gallery, and they start fighting again. Romeo heads to the museum while Watson follows him. Finally, they all enter the museum. They are talking and wandering around when suddenly they see a gargoyle. It starts chasing them, and they manage to escape through the balcony, but the gargoyle catches Romeo. The gargoyle reaches the top of the museum with Romeo in his hand and sees Watson right below him. It tries to grab Watson with his other hand, which causes him to fall down the balcony and shatter. Sherlock and Juliet are devastated, but the two continue on their way. They eventually figure out the clue and realize that their next stop is Royal Green Park. They go to the park disguised as a squirrel. There, they see a card inside a squeaky toy. Unfortunately, it is in the hands of a dog that had previously bit Sherlock. The two somehow manage to take the toy, but Juliet ends up accidentally squeaking it. This causes the dog to wake up and chase them around the park. They run and jump on a vehicle, but the dog catches up to them. Sherlock grabs the clue from the squeaky toy from the dog, but they end up crashing into a tree. The clue on the back of the card is a button, and they are on to their next stop. On the other hand, the gargoyle has taken Nomeo to a place where all the gnomes are partying. The gargoyle that brought him here flies off. Another gargoyle is present there who happens to be in charge of all the other gnomes. Just then, Nomeo asks his friends what is going on, and they tell him that the gargoyles have kept them here. This is because the gnomes are going missing, and they are being kept here to be safe. Nomeo doesn't believe them, and neither do his parents. His parents ask what's going to happen to them, and that's when Nomeo tells them that they are going to get smashed. He whispers this, but another gnome with very big ears hears him. Because of this, he announces this news to all the gnomes there, and they all start panicking. The gargoyle then tells them to keep silent and finally goes to sleep. While he is asleep, the other gnomes make an escape plan as the door is locked. The plan consists of Nomeo escaping through the skylight and unlocking the door from outside. This would help all the gnomes to escape. However, they need a distraction. They start figuring out what to do in order to distract the gargoyle. Just then, another gnome crashes into something. The gargoyle sees a gnome dressed as a fairytale princess. The gargoyle likes the gnome's attire a lot. As it turns out, the gargoyle likes fairy tales. The gnomes have now found their distraction. On the other hand, Sherlock and Juliet head to their next destination, which is the doll museum. They knock on the door and it opens. Juliet asks who the boss is, and Sherlock points to a doll that seems to hate him. He informs Juliet that he had actually ended their engagement through a letter. Sherlock finally approaches the doll and asks her for the clue, but she starts to sing a song instead. At the end of the song, she shows Sherlock the clue, but instead of giving him the clue, she simply throws the two outside. Juliet doesn't take it well, and she knocks on the door anyway to get the clue. The dolls let Juliet in, but not Sherlock. When Juliet asks for the clue, Irene, the doll, makes her sit down and starts to talk with her. But Juliet isn't there to talk. Therefore, she stands up and asks Irene for the clue. Irene replies that she'll give it to her on two conditions. The first one is that this has nothing to do with Sherlock, and the second condition is that after the case is solved, Juliet has to come back and talk to Irene about how it all went. Juliet readily accepts the conditions and takes the clue. After some time, Sherlock examines the clue, and there it is said to join all the patterns on the card together. Sherlock does so, and it looks like the gate of the Tower of London. But the tower is on the other side of the city, so they instantly start moving. The gnomes, on the other hand, are casting a play of Beauty and the Beast to distract the gargoyle. Nomeo takes this chance to get out of the skylight, but the other gargoyle arrives just at that time and is startled to see the gnomes partying inside. The other gargoyle tells his friend to take them all to a secret place. The two then put all the gnomes in a bag. Because of this, Nomeo realizes that he was too late and is now thinking of what to do. Meanwhile, Sherlock and Juliet finally enter the tower. There, they ask Moriarty to come out, but they are more than surprised to see Watson walk out. Apparently, Watson had saved himself with his cane, and the shattering noise was of a flower pot. Watson says that the M on the card was a W, but Sherlock didn't notice that, because the only person he had ever respected was Moriarty. Finally, Watson claims he has done all this because Sherlock had never respected him like his partner, and that he treated Watson very badly. Watson is very hurt by Sherlock's actions, as he thought that they were the best crime-solving partners in London. His intentions were never to hurt the gnomes, so he lets them all go. Watson then says that he hopes for Sherlock to treat his new partner better in the future. That's when Juliet requests Watson to free the gnomes. Watson agrees and tells the gargoyles to open the door where the gnomes are. They open the door but see all the gnomes gone. Watson asks what's going on, and the gargoyles finally tell him that they are actually working for Moriarty, who already knew about Watson's plan and had decided to use it against Sherlock. Then, the gargoyles capture the three in a bag, and when they finally know where they are, they figure out that it's a ship. They see a tunnel light up below them, and they open the vent and run down the path. When they reach the end of the path, they see Moriarty on a TV, and Watson is really confused about how he survived. Moriarty shows them a video about when he fell with the skeleton, and he had barely survived thanks to his rolling pin. Then he shows the gnomes on his side in the shape of an M. He tells them his plan, that he was going to attach all the gnomes to a room below the bridge, and when the ship passes, the bridge will rise up and the 500-pound counterweight will fall, crushing the gnomes. They get out of the box and take soap with them to remove the glue that Moriarty used to stick the gnomes in an M shape, and they take a drone and head off. Luckily, Nomeo had followed the gargoyles to the tower and was under the bridge. Juliet, Sherlock, and Watson see that the bridge has been stopped because 3 gnomes were dancing there, which made a man tell the others to stop the bridge, and the ship to stop as well. Moriarty is enraged seeing this and makes his way under the bridge. He sees a gnome and assumes that it is Sherlock, but he is surprised to see that it is another gnome. Gnomeo jumps off the bridge, and Juliet catches him just in time. She apologizes to him for the way she acted and Gnomeo forgives her. Then they split up into teams, Gnomeo and Juliet to distract the gargoyles, Sherlock to distract Moriarty, and Watson to free the gnomes. Watson goes to the rooms the gnomes were in, and pours the soap over them to set them free from the glue. He also pours water on them, and they get out of the glue. Sherlock starts running away from Moriarty, who is chasing him with a weapon. That's when Moriarty tells Sherlock that they're the same, but Sherlock doesn't believe it. Sherlock manages to escape and gets out of there. On the other hand, Juliet is running through the bridge while distracting the gargoyles. Just then, she comes to a dead end. The gargoyles tell her that she has nowhere to go. Suddenly, Gnomeo comes up from behind her and turns on the light of the drone. This alerts the people, which causes a man to point the searchlight at the bridge. The gargoyles freeze upside down because of this and end up falling into the river. The bridge then reopens when they all realize that the people dancing are only 3 garden gnomes. All of the gnomes then run out of the building. Meanwhile, Sherlock is about to fall down a rock because of Moriarty, but he holds on. Moriarty steps on Sherlock's foot hard and leaves to the others whose drone he has crashed. He also is about to throw Watson off the bridge, but just then, Sherlock runs to the rescue and pushes Moriarty off the bridge along with himself. Sherlock is about to meet his end, but Watson saves him. Nevertheless, Sherlock and Watson finally become friends again. The scene then changes to the spring season. All the gnomes are celebrating the seedling ceremony with their 2 leaders. They are all delighted, and even Irene and the Chinese cat dolls come to the ceremony. Everything is back to as it was before, and the gnomes are safe in their new garden.